What's going on, Islanders? Dreadnought Ryan here. And today we're going to talk O-rings. That's right. The guy who only talks about 6-inch figures and G.I. Joe. Well, we are going to be talking O-rings. And I want to send a big shout out to White Vegeta, who it was his idea for me to cover these particular O-ring creators and just kind of walk through some of the amazing products and figures that they've created. As many of us who grew up in the 80s know, G.I. Joe was such an important brand for many of us. In the 80s, we also had so many toy companies out there. You had Kenner, you had Mattel, you had Hasbro, you had Fisher-Price, Tonka, Mego, just tons and tons and tons of toy companies out there competing for retail space, competing for consumers, and they created so many amazing toy lines. It truly made the 80s one of the best times to grow up as a kid. As we all know, though, a lot of those companies were bought up by each other. And today, if we really look at it, it's Mattel and Hasbro. They are the two biggest people on the block. They have purchased up the majority of their competition. And unfortunately, if you look back, Hasbro now, if they want to create O-ring figures, they're so big they can't sell enough of those figures to financially meet expectations of making those figures and making money back on them. Now, we have seen that the Transformers crossovers have been quite successful. Again, you're going after a bigger consumer base with Transformers fans as well as G.I. Joe fans. And yes, the HasLab Sky Striker did fund and did pretty darn well. Funding better than what I actually expected. But I also have to wonder if the Rancor failing helped push some folks to the G.I. Joe HasLab Sky Striker. Where I kind of wonder if Hasbro can't make enough of these O-ring figures for it to financially justify doing it is with the 2-packs that they had put up on Hasbro Pulse. Looked like Hasbro Pulse was the only retailer that wanted those. And we've seen that a mix of just the figures not looking like they used to, just some poor QC issues, as well as just maybe some of the choices of the figures. You've seen some of them kind of just die on the vine. And now, with all of that being said, though, does that mean that O-ring is dead? No, it's not. What it means is Hasbro can't make enough of them to justify tooling costs, marketing costs, and production costs for them at this point. But what can happen is it allows other creators to come and fill those voids. And that's exactly what we have here. These particular creators that we're going to talk about today have filled in that void. And the best part about them is these were all fans of the Joe line, just like us when we were kids. So the first one I want to talk about is DeltaSeventeen. This company was created by Steve. He is the mad genius behind all of these designs. He's created this trifecta of danger. You have, Russia versus the US versus this cybernetic ninja group. So you'll have different foes that can be matched against each other in this great story that's coming down the line that will allow, customizers. It will allow fans of the O-rings to help build out and create new factions within your own collections, and tell some great stories either through figure photography or through play motion, talking to you guys over at Joburg. But Steve, who is also supported by Ken Poe, our good friend from Toy Connection, he is not doing this line as a Kickstarter. He has funded this particular line of figures, which will be 11 to start with his own funds. And so what does that mean? It means this fall we'll have these figures in hand. So definitely be on the lookout for DeltaSeventeen. I will include links to all of these creators in the description on YouTube, but you can definitely go check out their web pages. Set those reminders for when new stuff starts to hit, when the pre-orders or just orders are available. So again, DeltaSeventeen, for those folks that saw at Joe Fest, tremendous reception. Everybody really liked what they saw. And again, these are already in production, and we should have these this fall. Next up is Legends of the Hidden Force. This was a Kickstarter. It was done by, Whiskey Jack Toys and Chad Mated, or sorry, Chad Matted. This, particular Kickstarter was based off of pretty much just martial arts ninjas, mystical warriors, and this was created, of course, with. If anybody knows Darren, he's done a number of different projects in the past. He's been a part of a number of different companies who've done O-ring figures. And looking at some of these paint masters, you can see just the amazing detail that they've put into them. And I'm happy to say that this particular project did fund. So let's be on the lookout for Legends of the Hidden Force updates on more to come with these particular figures. The outline to me is Operation Recall. And why this is an outlier is, for anybody who knows Carson Metaxas, he is one of the biggest fans of G.I. Joe, but I want to say one of the best ambassadors for our community. He is truly doing God's work with documenting and ensuring that all of us remember the men and women who are behind this amazing line. And with Operation Recall, this is just another step in Carson documenting and also recognizing some of the amazing folks who created, to me, one of the best toy lines ever. As most of you will know, Rottello, who you see here on the left, was actually a figure that was designed by Carson. He had wrote a letter up, put the figure design, backstory, and sent it to Hasbro. Unfortunately, they decided not to make this figure, sent him the letter back. And of course, as Carson got to know many of the creators of G.I. Joe, through his books, through his website, 3D Joe's, he developed relationships with all of them. And then came this crazy idea of Operation Recall. Carson then opened it up to the Joe community for their submissions for their own figures. And what we've seen is just so many amazing creations, amazing backstories, and just excitement from the communities for some of these figures that they've come up with. The fact that you have Kirk Baziggy and Larry Hama, working on these figures, and having the original designers going through and doing hand molded, plumber's putty to build these characters just like they were done in the 80s. Seeing Ron Rudett and Mark Pennington sketches for them. And then to know that these figures are going to match up to what we had in the 80s, because they are hand molded, they're perfect imperfections. Not all the pockets are going to be exactly the same. The grenades aren't going to be exactly the same, but that's what makes them so magical. Current action figures are designed through computers, which you can copy and paste certain things so that it ensures that everything is the same size, everything looks correct. Well, this style of production, it's all done by hand, so you can't make it be exactly the same. And that's what I think makes it so magical, is you can feel the humanity in these figures, and I just can't wait to actually get these figures in hand. I think this will be the closest that we'll see to that, the real American hero of 1983 when you first opened up your Joe's feelings, just because of the group that is behind it. Carson is also capturing, filming and sharing all of these updates to everyone. So more to come on Operation Recall. This is actually probably one of the funnest project Kickstarters that I think I've ever seen, just because of the involvement of the community, as well as having our OG G.I. Joe creators involved in it. And then finally, I want to, send a big shout out to our friends over at Grindstone Toys. These guys have been working with a number of different creators, either RoboSkull or Marauders, to bring out, their particular figure line, Callside Longbow. Again, this is one of those where you're mixing the USSR versus the USA with another hidden force, behind it. So it's going to add more intrigue to the storytelling. We're getting some pretty cool comics. The figures look absolutely fantastic. Probably the tracksuit hood is, my opinion, one of the best troop builders that you can possibly get with the Molotov cocktail. With updates that have been made in technology as far as plastics are going, having less chance of thumbs breaking, different things like that, production values going up. I think Callside Longbow is also going to be another one of those lines that will continue to grow and grow over the years, and should make, O-ring collectors, say, yeah, we do deserve a little bit more respect. And I hope at some point where Hasbro will license off the G.I. Joe O-ring line to one of these type of creators so that they can show the love while making it affordable, and, bringing out some of the more Joes to the O-ring line. Finally, it brings me to the newest Kickstarter project out there. This one actually just kicked off, I want to say, just a few days ago. And it's basically a troop builder for your USS Flag. It's brought to you by Heavy Armor Toys. And it's basically join the Navy. They're going to have multiple different sailors that you can choose from. There'll be an ABC, so that you can either get, a blonde-haired, a brunette, Caucasian figure, or an African-American figure. And then they also have a Navy SEAL figure. And if they do unlock more tiers, you can see that they'll also have other figures that they'll add to the line, which should help build out your USS Flag fleet if you like. I will include the links for this particular Kickstarter. This company is out of Wisconsin. So hopefully we'll hear more about them in the coming days and get to enjoy some more of these updates. Again, I want to thank everybody who is a subscriber for the Island of Misfit Toy Collectors. You guys are absolutely amazing. Again, for any of you guys who went to Joe Fest, I hope you guys had an absolute blast and you got to check out some of these O-ring lines. Check out Robo Skull and Skeletron. You got to go over and say hi to our friends over at DeltaSeventeen. And more importantly, you got to reconnect with friends that you hadn't seen in a while. And more importantly, I just hope you guys had a great time. Again, wherever you're at on the Island of Misfit Toy Collectors, I hope you're having a great evening, day, morning, and more importantly, go O-ring!